Have you ever thought you were making the safest decision of your life, only to realize later it was the very choice that stole away the little freedoms that made life worth living? At 82, I believed moving into a nursing home would give me peace, safety, and the comfort my family promised. They said I would be cared for, that I could finally relax and not worry about the burdens of daily living. But the reality was nothing like what I had imagined. The shock wasn't in the small room or the scheduled meals. It was something far deeper, something that shook me to the core. It was the moment I realized I had quietly signed away my independence. Wisdom beyond 60, dear everyone, let me tell you this. The loss of independence doesn't come crashing down in one dramatic instant. It slips in quietly, piece by piece, until you suddenly see you no longer hold the keys to your own life. Before moving in, I woke when I wanted. If I felt like having coffee at midnight, I did. If I wanted to take a walk in my garden, the choice was mine. These simple decisions, so ordinary at the time, gave me a sense of ownership over my life. But inside the nursing home, even the smallest choice was no longer mine. Breakfast arrived at a set time whether I was hungry or not. Lights went out at the same hour whether I was ready for bed or still wide awake. Even going outside for fresh air required permission and waiting until someone was available to escort me. What struck me hardest was the slow erosion of identity. One morning during my first week there, I sat up in a bed that didn't feel like mine, looked around the sterile walls, and felt a chilling realization. My life no longer belonged to me. At home, my favorite chair, my books, the little treasures collected over the years reminded me who I was. Here, those anchors were gone, replaced by sameness and silence. And that silence screamed louder than any noise I had ever known. I learned quickly that once independence is surrendered, reclaiming it is nearly impossible. At first, I resisted. I asked if I could choose different meals, if I could take a walk when I felt like it, but soon the answers came back the same. Not now, maybe later, that's not how we do it here. Eventually, I stopped asking. I adapted because I had to. But adapting came at a price, the gradual fading of the person I used to be. Many people imagine that moving into a nursing home is simply a change of address, a transition to more care and comfort. The truth is harsher. It is a shift of power. The control over your time, your space, your choices, those vanish into the routine of an institution. And once you hand over those freedoms, you begin to feel less like yourself and more like a name on a chart. That is the part no one warns you about. If you are listening right now, take this as a wake-up call. Ask yourself honestly, are you ready to give up the small freedoms that make life yours? Because once they are gone, you will miss them more deeply than you ever thought possible. Before we continue, I want to pause and ask you to support this channel. Please subscribe to Beyond 60 Wisdom so we can keep sharing stories that matter, stories that might one day change the way you see your own life. Your support is the reason we can keep going. And now, I leave you with a question to reflect on. Imagine this choice in front of you. A, having all your meals, schedules, and routines managed for you with no effort on your part. B, struggling a bit more each day, but keeping the freedom to decide when to eat, when to rest, and how to live. Which would you choose? Comment below with your answer, A or B, and let's see how many of us still believe independence is worth fighting for. When I first arrived at the nursing home, my family surrounded me with words of comfort. They promised that nothing would change between us, that they would be there every week, that I would never feel abandoned. And in those first days, it felt almost true. My daughter would come with her bright smile, my grandchildren would fill the room with their chatter, and for a brief moment, it seemed as if life still carried me in its rhythm. But time has a way of softening intentions. What began with steady visits slowly shifted into hurried phone calls, then messages promising, "We'll come soon." Eventually, the silence grew longer than the visits themselves. That silence has a weight that few understand until they live inside it. At home, I was part of the daily world. I was seen at the market, waved at by neighbors, included in the ordinary flow of life. In the nursing home, the walls stand between you and that current, and you begin to feel yourself drifting farther away. The days pass, but without those visits, without those voices, you begin to wonder if the world has already moved on and left you behind. I remember sitting in the common room one Sunday, watching the door. Every time it opened, I felt a flicker of hope that someone would step in for me. Sometimes our families arrived with flowers and gifts for their loved ones, and the joy on those faces was undeniable. But when the door closed and no one came for me, that flicker of hope burned out and left only the ache of being forgotten. It wasn't just me. I saw it on the faces of others too. People glancing toward the hallway, pretending to read or nap, when really they were waiting for a visit that might never come. The truth is, it's not always because love disappears. My family still cared, but life outside went on without me. My daughter's job demanded more hours. My grandchildren had their studies, their friends, their own growing lives. They didn't mean to forget, but distance makes it easy to believe that a quick phone call is enough. For them, time slipped by in busy schedules. For me, time stretched long and empty, measured in the space between one knock on the door and the next. There were nights when I reached for the phone to call my son, just to hear his voice. But I would hesitate, afraid of sounding needy, afraid of reminding him that I was still here, waiting. I would set the phone down, telling myself he would call soon, even though I knew that soon might not come. That's when I realized the hardest truth of all. When you are out of sight, you are slowly erased from the rhythm of other people's lives. This is the reality so many do not consider. You think you will always be remembered, that the bonds of love will hold strong against the barrier of distance. But in a nursing home, it is easy to become invisible. The world moves on, and unless someone makes the effort to pull you back into it, you watch it from behind glass, a spectator instead of a participant. If you are thinking about this path, you must ask yourself if you are ready to face that loneliness. Because no matter how deeply your family cares, the truth is that absence changes things. And once you are no longer woven into the daily pattern of their lives, you will feel that separation in a way words can barely describe. The regret isn't simply about fewer visits. It's about realizing that you are no longer part of the center of anyone's world, but only a memory they return to when time allows. When I left my home behind, I thought I was just changing where I slept at night, maybe giving up a few routines. I never imagined I was also letting go of the very things that gave my life meaning. At home, even the smallest duties carried weight. Brewing a pot of coffee, tidying up the living room, or stepping into the garden to water the plants gave me a rhythm, a sense of being useful. These were not just tasks to fill the day. They were small affirmations that I still had a role, that I was still needed in this world. Inside the nursing home, that quiet sense of purpose slipped away faster than I could grasp it. Meals appeared without my effort, laundry was taken from my hands, and the plants I once tended were no longer mine to care for. At first, I told myself it was freedom, that finally I could rest, that I no longer had to carry the burden of daily chores. But very soon I realized that rest without responsibility is not freedom at all. It is emptiness. I remember a man named Henry, a retired mechanic who used to fix cars for neighbors long after his retirement. At home, his hands were always busy, tightening bolts, polishing chrome, bringing old engines back to life. In the nursing home, those hands sat idle on his lap. His tools were gone, his projects left unfinished. One afternoon, he said to me, "I don't even recognize myself anymore." That single sentence captured the heart of what happens when purpose is taken away. You stop seeing the person you were, and you begin to feel like just another body filling a chair. The days grew longer, not because of the hours themselves, but because nothing within them carried meaning. I would sit by the window after breakfast, staring out at the trees, wondering how I would fill the endless stretch of time until dinner. Back at home, I never thought about how to fill the hours. They filled themselves with books, conversations, walks, or even small repairs around the house. Here in this place, the hours stretched thin, and waiting became my main occupation. Waiting for meals, waiting for visits, waiting for sleep. And in that waiting, I began to feel smaller, like I was fading. It is not just boredom, though boredom plays its part. It is the loss of having something that is truly yours to tend, to create, to protect. Purpose is not reserved for the young or the ambitious. It is the heartbeat of every life, at every age. Without it, the mind grows restless, then weary, and the body soon follows. I watched it happen to others around me too. People who had once been lively and animated now sat silent, eyes fixed on the floor, their days stripped of anything to look forward to. That perhaps is the cruelest truth about losing purpose. It does not vanish with a loud crash. It leaves quietly, unnoticed at first, until one day you realize you have been living without it for months. And by then, reclaiming it feels almost impossible. If you are thinking about this path for yourself or someone you love, do not underestimate the value of small responsibilities. They are not burdens, they are lifelines. A chore, a hobby, a routine, these are the threads that hold a life together. When they are taken away, what remains may look like care and comfort from the outside, but from the inside, it feels like an unraveling. Looking back, I wish I had fought harder to keep my little rituals, the ones that seemed so ordinary, but gave me a reason to rise in the morning. Because once they are gone, you begin to understand that a life without purpose is not rest, it is surrender. Before I moved into the nursing home, I thought I was doing fairly well for my age. I wasn't running marathons, but I could still cook my own meals, take care of errands, and walk around the block without needing help. My little routines, stretching in the morning, sweeping the porch, carrying groceries, kept me moving, and I believed those simple habits were enough to keep me strong. But once I entered this place, everything changed, not in one dramatic moment, but slowly, in ways I didn't see until it was too late. At first, I felt relieved. Meals were delivered right to me, and I no longer had to spend time in the kitchen. If I needed something, a button brought help within minutes. It seemed like I had earned a life of ease after years of working hard. But what I didn't realize was that this ease came at a hidden cost. The less I moved, the less I did for myself, the weaker I became. Muscles that had served me well for decades began to fade in just a matter of months. Stiffness set in, climbing out of a chair became harder, and soon even walking down the hallway felt like a task. I remember a neighbor of mine, Margaret, who was full of life when she first arrived. She told me proudly she wasn't going to slow down just because of a number on her birthday. Every day she walked laps around the courtyard. But I watched as her routine shrank. First, she skipped a day here and there. Then she started leaning on a walker. A few months later, she was using a wheelchair. One afternoon, she looked at me and said, "I don't know when it happened, but I feel like I aged 10 years in just a few months." Her words struck me because I was feeling the same. That is the cruel truth about life in a place designed for comfort. The very things that make life easier can quietly take away your strength. When you stop using your body, you start losing it. At home, the little tasks that kept me moving also kept me alive in ways I didn't fully appreciate. Carrying laundry, standing at the stove, walking out to the mailbox, those weren't just chores. They were exercise disguised as daily life. In the nursing home, with every effort removed, I discovered how quickly the body forgets what it once knew. And it wasn't just me. All around me, I saw people arrive on their own 2 feet, only to lose that independence within a year. People who had once prided themselves on taking care of themselves were now reliant on others for even the simplest things. It was as if the more help we were given, the more help we came to need. That cycle pulls you down faster than you can imagine, and once it starts, it's nearly impossible to reverse. Looking back, I wish I had pushed myself harder to stay active, even when everything around me encouraged me to rest. I wish I had fought the temptation to let others do for me what I could still do myself, because now I see that movement is not just about staying busy, it is about survival. Once you slow down, it takes everything you have to rise again. If you are considering this path, you must ask yourself whether you will still have the motivation to keep your body strong when the world around you tells you to sit and be comfortable. Because the truth is, ease can be dangerous, and the comfort you think you are gaining might actually be the very thing that speeds up the decline you fear most. One of the most difficult realities I faced after moving into the nursing home was the loss of privacy and the quiet dignity that comes with it. At home, I had always been able to close my door, sit in my chair, and simply be with myself. I could take a shower when I wanted, walk into the kitchen in the middle of the night, or spend the morning in my pajamas without anyone watching. Those choices were not just habits, they were part of who I was. Here, that sense of control slipped away almost immediately, and I didn't realize how much it mattered until it was gone. From the first week, I noticed the difference. Staff entered my room at scheduled times, sometimes without waiting long after a knock. Room checks were routine, and although I knew they were done for safety, they reminded me constantly that I was no longer alone in my own space. Even basic things like dressing or using the bathroom often required help. And though I was grateful for the assistance, it was not easy to surrender independence over such private moments. Each time I pressed the call button and waited for someone to come, I felt a piece of my self-respect slipping away. And then there was the matter of sharing a room. Not everyone has to, but many of us do. I was lucky in that my roommate was kind, but still, the space never truly felt mine. The sounds, the habits, even the small differences in how another person lived became constant reminders that this was not my sanctuary. For others, it was even harder. I knew people who shared with roommates who were noisy, confused, or restless at night, making sleep nearly impossible. When you cannot choose the person you live beside, you discover quickly how fragile peace can be. It extended beyond the room itself. Meal options were limited, and if I didn't like what was on the menu, I had little say. Activities were planned on schedules, not on personal preference. Even the simple act of sitting quietly sometimes felt like it was being supervised. I realized that in this environment, privacy was no longer a right but a luxury, and one that I couldn't always have. What struck me most was the way this constant oversight began to chip away at my sense of identity. At home, I was still an individual with routines, preferences, and choices. In the nursing home, I sometimes felt reduced to a patient, a name on a chart, someone to be cared for, rather than someone living their own life. The change was subtle at first, but with each passing month, it became more difficult to ignore. Losing privacy is not just about being seen. It is about losing the ability to decide for yourself how and when you want to live the most ordinary parts of your day. Dignity is bound up in those choices. When someone enters without waiting, when you must ask permission to shower, when you cannot decide what or when to eat, the erosion of dignity is slow but relentless. You adapt, yes, but deep inside you feel the weight of what has been taken. For anyone considering this step, I cannot stress enough how important it is to think about what privacy means to you. It is easy to assume that being cared for will bring comfort, but what many do not realize is that comfort often comes with the cost of being constantly observed, managed, or dependent. And once that privacy is gone, reclaiming it is far harder than you might expect. Looking back, I see now that what I missed most were not grand freedoms, but the small daily choices that allowed me to feel human, whole, and in control. Without them, life inside those walls began to less like living and more like existing under watchful eyes. That, to me, was one of the hardest truths to face. Looking back on the journey of leaving home for a nursing facility, what strikes me most is not just the daily changes, but the slow unraveling of things I once took for granted. Independence, connection, purpose, strength, privacy, each slipped away in ways I never expected. None of it happened overnight. It was the gradual realization that comfort came with a price, and that price was the life I once knew. The meals, the help, the routines were meant to make living easier, but instead they carried me into a place where time moved forward, yet meaning seemed to fade. The hardest part was not simply losing control over my choices, but losing the sense of being fully myself. Yet within these regrets lies a powerful lesson, one I believe can guide others before they reach the same point. Aging does not mean surrendering who you are. Even when your body slows down, even when your circumstances change, you can still fight to protect the small things that give life its richness. Purpose does not vanish with age. It needs to be nurtured in new ways. Connection does not have to fade. It requires reaching out, speaking up, reminding family and friends that their presence matters more than gifts or promises. Independence is not only about living alone, it is about making sure your voice, your choices, and your dignity are honored wherever you are. For those of you listening now, the lesson is simple but powerful. Protect what makes you feel alive. If you are still in your own home, hold on to your routines, no matter how small. Water your plants, cook your own meals when you can, take those daily walks even if they are short. If you rely on others for help, do not give up on the choices that are still yours to make. Say what you prefer. Keep the hobbies that bring you joy. Write letters, sing, pray, or paint, whatever keeps your spirit awake. And if you are a family member with someone in a nursing home, know that your visits, your calls, your touch matter more than you can imagine. The minutes you share are lifelines. The truth is, getting older is not about losing everything. It is about holding on to what truly matters with more determination than ever before. You may not control every circumstance, but you can choose how you live within them. The regrets I have now are not meant to frighten you, but to remind you that you still have time to choose differently, to fight for your independence, to stay connected, to keep meaning alive. That is the gift you can give yourself, and it is never too late to start. So let me ask you kindly, do you believe that the small choices, like keeping a routine or a hobby, can truly make life more meaningful in old age? Please share your thoughts in the comments, because your perspective may inspire someone else who is struggling right now. And if you found this message meaningful, if it touched your heart or gave you something to reflect on, please subscribe to Beyond 60 Wisdom. Leave a comment with your own experiences and share this video with friends who may need these words today. Your support gives us the strength to continue creating thoughtful and heartfelt videos for you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here, for listening, and for walking this path with us. Together, we can make each day richer, fuller, and brighter than the one before.